Namaste. Yesterday was my first satsang that I have attended. I've only heard about you just when I came to Rishikesh 3 days back. Saw your poster, just got the location, just came in here. It was very enlightening to be here, to hear you for the first time. Then I started, as usual, the mind goes on Googling, understanding, what got you there and how you have become spiritual and what led you there and so on and so forth. And I saw some of your videos. One of the interesting concepts that you brought about the mind. And as a spiritual aspirant, one tries to keep the vikshepa under control. In the sense, it doesn't want the mind to wander all over the place, wants to really get inward into a spiritual seeking. In that process, you brought a very interesting concept. Why should the mind be under control when it has not been under control for the last 50 years or so? That was a very interesting concept, I thought. We all try to be, thinking, the vikshepa has to be in ekagrita, and then we get into, a level trying to for an inner connections and try to meditate upon whatever it could be the ultimate reality is all about. I have no idea for that. Could you kindly enlighten me on this? What could be the process and what is as a spiritual aspirant one tries to achieve, in this. You could consider me as somewhat a seeker, been seeking for the last few years, seeking what happiness, which is inward, not external, and I would appreciate your guidance on this.
Process for what exactly?
At the moment, as mentioned to you, when we do realize the mind keeps going all around the place, probably the causes could be many, desires, tendencies, whatever we have read in the books. Then as a spiritual aspirant, you know that you have to really get into, not allow it to wander, turn inwards, understand who are you, who am I, what am I, etc. So in that, a meditative process probably I thought could be one of the ways. This only because reading the books, attending satsangs and so on and so forth. Like sitting quiet, it's impossible because the mind wanders. Mind is meant to think. Unfortunately, it keeps on thinking with consciously and without consciously as well, trying to bring back and try to be as conscious as possible. The process, when you ask me what is the process you would like to do, I have no idea. I think as a spiritual aspirant, I can ask you because you have been through that. And what needs to be done, just to have an inward connection, if there's one, and how one would achieve that.
It's interesting when you say that the mind has to be kept within, the mind has to be prevented from wandering. You'd see it sounds almost like a moral obligation. What is the need to prevent the mind from wandering? Is there a need?
Yes, I presume so. I have no problems if I generate the thoughts on my own consciously. But when the thoughts keep coming up on their own, I read somewhere, one of the analogies could give us a perspective on this. If there's a nail and I hammer the nail, it's fine. But if there's no nail and the hammer keeps on going around, then it looks a bit absurd. In an introspection, what happens is thoughts, many of them are crap, many of them are useless, and why do they come up? Probably you could say I've cultivated that way. Consciously or unconsciously, I have no idea, but this is the time to correct, I thought. So I am seeking that way.
So what's the problem with having crap thoughts?
It's not required. Why do you want to have?
So what's the problem with having something that is not required?
is having a garbage at home
What's the problem with having garbage?
because it stinks.
If it stinks, so what?
So what? Because you don't want to have it.
So that's desire.
That's not a desire. That could be an aspiration.
Whatsoever it is, why do you ultimately not want to have it?
Because I feel it's absurd. It's
Then this feeling,
which is not coming out of my own will. It's coming up somewhere.
so what happens when you are subjected to something which is not coming from your own will?
May I come back with a question again, please?
No. What happens when you are subjected to something that you say is not coming from your own will?
I don't like it. I don't like it in the sense, not from the ego perspective, but from an observation perspective. I mean, you don't want to have something you don't want to have.
Right. So the mind wanders outwards, and that is not likable. That is not likable. And you know that it is not likable, right? Then why does the mind still wander outwards?
Habit, maybe. We don't know. Cultivated habits, which probably wrongly nurtured. I have no idea. But I don't want to go.
But is that your daily experience? Once you know that it hurts to put your palm on the flame, do you still do that? Take the example of a kid, little kid. He may go near fire accidentally for the first time. Gets hurt, gets a boil. And then, does he repeat what he has done? So then if we say so confidently that the consequences of this wandering are not likable, why do we keep repeating this?
Unfortunately, it happens unconsciously, Acharya ji. That's the problem here. The problem, if it happens consciously, wanting to really hold your consciousness all the time, it may not happen. But that is the problem holding it on. And when you are unconsciously happening and the mind wanders, thoughts go around, thoughts keep coming out. One sits and wonder, where did I get lost so long?
But when stuff happens just unconsciously, then at that moment one is unconscious even of the suffering associated with it. Suffering itself means that the experiencer is conscious of the suffering, right? Right? So an unconscious activity, if it remains purely unconscious, cannot be a cause of suffering. If you are unconscious of the activity, then you will unconsciously have the experience as well. There is no problem. Is the happening really unconscious? Or is it a trick of the conscious to enjoy the happening by labeling it as unconscious? You'll have to see whether the questioner is also the enjoyer of the pleasure that comes from wandering. On one hand, we aver that the wandering of mind or thoughts is a problem. On the other hand, we remain recipients of the pleasure that comes from such wandering. If the problem is a pleasure, will the problem ever be resolved? Then is the problem a problem at all? Or is it so that we are calling it a problem just out of a sense of moral obligation? Hmm? Do we really honestly say that the situation is dislikable? It's understandable that a lot is stored in the subconscious and a lot of movement happens in the subconscious. But suffering jolts you back to consciousness, right? You are sleeping, let's say. Hmm? And as you are sleeping, you put your hand on a hot plate. When your arm was moving towards the hot plate, it was a movement in unconsciousness, right? You did not know what was happening. But as soon as you touch the hot plate, are you still unconscious? Your suffering itself will pull you up to consciousness, correct? Provided there is suffering. What if there is pleasure? What if there is pleasure? Suffering itself is a great means of elevation of consciousness, provided one admits the suffering honestly. Not only will you jump up to consciousness, next night when you sleep, when you go to bed, you will ensure that there is no hot plate around you, right? So, in your consciousness, you will make arrangements that will protect you even when you are unconscious, right? In your conscious movements, you will make arrangements that will protect you even when you are unconscious, like bolting a door. Why do you bolt your door when you go off to sleep? Why do you set an alarm when you go to sleep? Do you see what you are doing? These are mechanisms to guard against your unconscious state. You know that you will be unconscious, so you have mechanisms. But if you are expecting a grand lover, would you still bolt the door? Or would you go to sleep deliberately having left the door open? And this grand lover walks in at midnight when you are deep asleep and walks away with all your belongings, and then you say, oh, it happened in my unconscious state. Yes, it indeed did happen in your unconscious state. But didn't you allow that to happen consciously? What prevented you from bolting the door? We narrate one side of the story usually, which is the dislikable side. Mind wanders and we say we do not like it. But the mind is a worshipper of pleasure. Or happiness, sukha. That is its prakriti. If it is going out to somewhere, for sure it is seeing pleasure in that direction. It can be understood that the mind can be a little foolish and can start seeing pleasure where it is not. But if the mind does that, then it will be corrected by experience, correct? You go to some place thinking that you will get happiness from that place, you didn't get happiness from that place, you won't return to that place. How is it possible that we keep returning again and again all our life? That means we are drawing some kind of fake happiness from places where forget spiritual joy, even material happiness is not really there. That's bad, very bad. Not only are we not going to places where spiritual joy is there, we are actually repeatedly going to places where even worldly, material happiness is not there. And to make things worse, we are calling our experience at such places as an experience of happiness. No, that's quite interesting and equally absurd, obviously. We are going to places where we are not even happy. And we know we are not happy there, and yet we are returning to those places every day, every night. But you somehow have to justify to yourself why you keep returning to those places. The actual reason is fear. The actual reason is faithlessness. But the ego does not like the connotations attached with these words. The ego has learned to not to call itself a coward or an infidel. So the ego will not say that it is going where it repeatedly keeps going for reasons of fear and faithlessness. So the ego says, I'm going there because I find happiness there. The real thing is you do not find even happiness there. You do not find even happiness there. And the moment you admit this, that the places you keep rushing to repeatedly do not offer you even happiness, you are liberated from those places and you are liberated from the wandering. But we will not admit that, because it requires guts to admit that. It requires a certain detachment from the status quo to admit that. Is that not so? You have to be prepared for the consequences. And you say, I honestly admit that I suffer when I wander out. You don't wander out randomly, right? You know where you go to when you wander out. Is that not so? Don't you know the contours, the broad contours of your wandering mind? When you say that you are lost in thoughts, are you really lost? No, no one is lost in thoughts. We all have destinations that thoughts habitually go to. Nobody is lost. We all have our favorite destinations, and thoughts are found there. Correct? So it's not a case of getting lost. Are those destinations offering you even pleasure? When you say the mind has to be turned inwards, why does the spiritual process involve this inwardness? Because we say that inside lies the treasure trove of spiritual bliss. We say Atma is Satchidanand, right? All these things we say. Similarly, Man is Sukha Swabhav. Atma can be indicated by Anand and Man by Sukh. Anand is obviously far higher than Sukh, because Sukh will entail Dukh, and Sukh comes and goes and ephemeral, all those things we know of, right? So if the mind is going somewhere, it is for the sake of Sukh. The moment you clearly tell the mind, son, you are not getting any Sukh at those places, not Anand. You are not getting even Sukh at those places. The mind is not so foolish that it will still keep visiting those places. We are a victim of our own inner conspiracies. We don't name things rightly. We don't spell stuff out correctly. झूठे सुख को सुख कहे मानत है मनमोद. We are brilliant artists, makeup artists. We are adept in calling false happiness as happiness. We pretend to be happy when we are not even happy. And all of us here know fully well what I'm talking of. Go to your social media pages and you will see what we are particularly dexterous in doing. We hide our own sadnesses from ourselves. And we play up our happinesses, don't we? That's not only the face we like to display to the world, unfortunately, that is also the face we like to display to ourselves. We want to tell ourselves that all our life investments, all our running around throughout our life has been successful. We don't want to admit that we have utterly failed. So we want to pretend to ourselves that we have succeeded and hence we are happy. And these two have to go together, right? If you have succeeded, then you ought to be happy. And if you dare admit to yourself that you are not happy, then you will have to immediately and equally admit that you have failed. And if you have failed, then you risk losing everything. If you are an utter failure, you will lose social standing. You may even lose your wife or husband. You will lose your kids' respect. You getting it? So we keep telling ourselves we are somebody. And we have succeeded. We are all right. I was just watching an advertisement. And that advertisement showed how you can totally change the context of a picture. And you know what the advertisement read? It said, perfecting your memories. What? Perfecting your memories. So there was a picture, a photograph, in which this young woman is there. And behind her is an ordinary landscape. Very ordinary landscape. And the advertisement showed how, with the aid of the new software or app or whatsoever it is, you can totally change the background. You can even change the way your face looks. If you are at a beach, and most popular beaches are usually crowded, that app or software will allow you to eliminate the crowd totally from the beach, and it will appear that only you are there at the beach and it's your personal beach. You are the queen of that beach. Perfecting your memories. That's the game we play with ourselves all our life. We keep telling ourselves we are happy, we are good. We keep lying to ourselves. Now what spirituality can help in this? What kind of process can assist someone who is hell-bent on cheating herself? If somebody outside of you is duping you, then you can be helped. But if you are hatching a conspiracy against yourself, who can help you? If the mind is going outwards, there is no need to try to forcibly pull it back. Let it go where it wants to go. Just go along with it. And ask, so this is the place you wanted to come to so desperately? Now you have reached here. Now tell me, how does it look? How does it feel? How does it smell? I'm not trying to take you back. I have no allurements, no promises. I'm not offering you spiritual liberation or an inner bliss. You wanted to travel to the other universes. I have been with you. Now we have come to the place you wanted to come to. Your desire has been fulfilled. Now show me what you are getting. You need to have a brutal conversation, which is not brutal actually, just honest. But because we are used to chicanery, so honesty these days looks like brutality. I am, for example, often accused of being rude. The mind is going this way, that way. Go fully with the mind. Let the mind go as far as it wants to go. And then when it has reached and is exhausted for a while, then ask it, so, how is it, son? I have not placed any constraints on you. In fact, you wanted to travel out. I gave you the keys of my car. Take it. That will make your journey easier. How are you feeling now? And this Q&A session has to be very honest. You know what is honesty? Honesty is first of all the desire to know the truth, the intention to be liberated. Before liberation comes, you require the intent to be liberated. That's what we lack in. It's not the process that we need, it's the intent we lack in. Of what use is a process to someone who does not even have the intent? And if you have the intent, the process is so straightforward. Only two things are possible. The mind goes off to some place and it finds happiness there. If it finds happiness there, let it go where it wants to go. What's the problem? You don't really have to tick a box by somehow pulling the mind back to the so-called source. If the mind is really finding happiness at some place, let the mind go there. And if the mind is not finding happiness there, then what's the point in going there? When we are afraid, then we cannot honestly ask ourselves, is this what I wanted? At 40 moments throughout our day, we should be asking this question to ourselves, is this worth having? Is this what I want? Did I set out for this? Is my life meant for this? And this you should be asking yourself every 15 minutes. But we will not ask ourselves this question because this question will make it impossible for us to live and function the way we do. This question will destroy the patterns of our status quo. So we will not ask. In fact, we very well know what the answer to this question is. So we deliberately avoid asking this question. Even if the question somehow manages to spring up, we immediately smother it and suppress it. We know the answer. We are not happy as we are. We are not all right. But we are afraid. So we cannot break out. We cannot let go of our jobs. We cannot change the family environment we are trapped in. We are afraid. And therefore it requires someone with a real sharpness of intent Spirituality is not some passive activity. It is active warfare. You need to have the taste for that. Spirituality is not for people who are easily satisfied, people who can compromise with situations. Timidity does not sit well with spirituality. Spirituality is for those who are fed up and will not tolerate stuff a second longer. In a nutshell, do not try to bring the mind back to some unknown place. There is nothing called within. As far as we are concerned, everything is without, external. There is just the world. So instead of trying to pull the mind back, inquire where the mind really goes to. Go to that place. Sharply investigate. That's what is needed.